Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the IRMS London Webinars on Wednesday that are back from out of space. Now, first thing you'll notice is I'm not Emily. Emily's here, but she's taking a break. So she's here when she was told to rest. So you can all judge her for that and tell her off for that. You can do that for many different ways, and I'll explain those ways shortly. So people are just logging in. Usual rules apply. If you want to chat, say hello, ask questions, those sorts of things, you've got the little chat functionality there. So first off, say hello in the little chat bit, and then we'll crack on with admin bits and telling you what's going to happen and some updates with what's coming from the society.
You dick.
I did warn you. I did warn you. So welcome to this session on the basics of cybersecurity. I'm going to be your host for this evening. So I'm here literally just to herd Lee, and that's about it really. So my job's fairly relaxed. Now, when Lee was pulling together his slides for this event, he threatened me with some interesting photos using my face. Therefore, I nipped into the bud and went, Lee, I can do better than that. So I've used an interesting photo using his face. You'd be surprised what you can do with Microsoft PowerPoint these days.
You could have just asked me. I would have worn that for you anyway, Scott. It's fun.
Kinky. Well, you can definitely take, I said you can take this image away, and I expect to see this image on LinkedIn.
Fine. I have no issue with this.
So I'll leave Lee to introduce himself fully when he gets going with this presentation. But my thanks go to Lee from YorCyberSec for agreeing to speak this evening and give us the basics of cybersecurity. So I'm just going to give you a quick update about some stuff that's going on with the society and some stuff that's going on with the London group. Then we'll go for, and I'll hand you straight over to Lee, and he's got some things to talk about around cybersecurity, and then we'll take questions as well. Lee said he's more than happy to take questions as we go along, so as usual, put them in the little chat functionality. He's also issued a parental advisory warning. Apparently, us southern folk, we have mild temperaments, so he's issued a northern warning that some of the things he's going to talk about and the language might be a little northern. So parental warning. Some other admin bits. If you've got any technical issues, not much I can do. So if the system kicks you out and you can't get back in again, keep trying and see what happens. There is some useful how-to guides on the Live Store website and some further guidance on the IRMS website as well. So if you do struggle to get back in, I know nothing. I cannot help you. Just keep trying and see what happens. Hopefully you can all see and hear us and see the presentation as well. If you can't and you're struggling to see anything or struggling to hear anyone, just put a little note in the chat functionality and let us know, and we'll see what we can do and we'll see what's what. We are recording this session, but the only thing that we see is these things in front of you. So the feeds, so the screens, what I'm presenting, what Lee will be presenting, and our video feeds. That's it. Beyond that, we don't record the chat, we don't record the questions or anything like that, and that's it. If you've got any questions, do put them in the little question functionality that appears there. I've also got some polls to push out to you as well. If you can fill them in, that'd be greatly appreciated. And if you've got any feedback, blame Emily completely. Email london@irms.org.uk, and yeah, that'll be for her.
I'm not taking responsibility for you.
Too late. So, some key updates from the IRMS then. First of all, we're back. So rather than being every single week, it's going to be at least for the rest of the year, once a month on a Wednesday. We've got some dates in the diary already, which will go on the website live from tonight. So if you do want to cover a specific topic at a future event, please do let us know. And while Emily and I go looking for speakers and specific content, we can cater your need. So when I deploy the poll in a moment, let me know what you want to talk about. Let me know any ideas. If you want to speak on a subject as well, please do let us know. We're more than happy to accommodate you. The previous webinars are up on the IRMS YouTube channel. There are some more to go up, but most of them you can find on there. So if you Google or search on YouTube for IRMS, it'll come up. There's a specific playlist for the webinars on Wednesday, as well as the other groups' webinars as well for your delighting view. The IRMS is also having an extraordinary general meeting to change one aspect of its constitution as part of the application to become a charity. So if you've not responded, for those of you that are members, if you've not responded to the EGM yet, if you could make it, please do come along. It shouldn't take very long because we're only looking to change one thing, but do come along and do input. If you've got any queries or questions, you can email David Reeve, the secretary, by emailing secretary@irms.org.uk, and it'll take you through what the changes are. Last but by no means least, well, no, not quite last just yet, but just a quick reminder that the IRMS conference is currently, emphasis on the word currently, going ahead. We're in constant contact with various organisations and various parts of government to work out what the long-term plan is. Yes, the arrangements and things have changed today, but they could change again in a couple of weeks' time. So we are literally taking it week by week to see what's what. But all contingencies, all plans are being worked on. And if you want to find out more information about the sorts of things we're putting in place for Conference 2020, then you can go onto the website and there's this click on the little button that says attend with confidence, and it will detail everything that's being put in place. Bigger rooms, allocated seating, PPE, screens, the lot. So if you want to find out more, it's all on there as well. Finally, little plug from me. We also run a monthly IRMS quiz. We're on to our 6th online quiz now. So they're themed. Well, they are and they're not. Most of the particular questions are themed. This one is going to be around high school because all the kids are back to school. So it's got a bit of a high school thing. If you want to come along and have your chance of winning one of our fancy prizes, then visit irms.org.uk. It'll appear on the little events bit on the bottom right hand side, or you can go to irms.org.uk/event/high school quizzical. And I totally agree, Cecilia. I'm not planning to do this forever. This is purely while Emily takes a rest and buggers off and takes her rest. Oh, I swore. For the quiz, you can win either £20 worth of, first prize is £20 worth of Tiptree Gins vouchers. So you can, at the moment, they've got an offer on. So you can, with your £20, you can get a bottle of gin and a bottle of something else. So this is an example of one of the previous winners. And also a lady from France. She came last, and not the last quiz before, and she won one of our coveted IRMS mugs. So you can win for winning, or you win a prize for winning, and you win a prize for coming last. So either way, everyone's a winner. That's pretty much enough from me. Please give a big IRMS London welcome to Lee, who I will hand over to now, and I look forward to hearing from him about all things cybersecurity.
Right, do I need to put my slides on now? I'm assuming so.
There we go.
Right. Is that right, Scott?
Yeah.
Sound right. A big how do welcome from me, obviously. My name's Lee. I'm from one of the directors at YorCyberSec and of AllowList. I just want to say thanks to Scott for inviting me to speak to you and attempt to talk about the basics of cybersecurity and whatever that may be. Right. How do I go across on this slide? There we go. So a little bit about who we are, who I am. So YorCyberSec was the business decided first in March 2019, and AllowList was June this year. One of the reasons I did this was to bring a new way for organizations and companies to look at the services within cyber and information security, aiming to save them time and money, because I'm yet to come across a unicorn IT team which is overstaffed and underworked. There may be one out there. I haven't found it yet. So we act as brokers and procurement assistants. So companies come to us and we look at the market and find solutions, be that around testing, GDPR, 27001, managed services, threat protection, incident response, anything. And it's been an interesting 18 months, and especially start this year as well. Some of the companies we work with, ranging from startups up to FTSE 100s. I've got Premier League football clubs that help look after banks, airlines as well. And as I mentioned, I've done everything from PCI, so Cyber Essentials, GDPR, information governance, policies, procedures, and you name it, I've pretty much done it. And then the AllowList is where we are creating a cybersecurity marketplace where companies and people can go to find services and solutions and consultants who have all been through due diligence. So everyone on there has been checked. So they are who they say they are. They do what they say they do. And if they say they've got a certificate, we've seen evidence and we can, have had proof that they do have that, because there's too many snake oil salesmen and companies out there at the moment. And it's just giving everyone a bit of a hard time when it's, a very, very popular market as it is. So some of the stuff I'm going to attempt to cover, and I will go off in tangents because I have a habit of doing that. And Scott says I have to string this out for an hour because everyone likes listening to a northern guy speak. So what cybersecurity is and what it is not, why cybersecurity is not basic, why it's simple, silver bullets, the do's, don'ts, and myths, where companies can begin, and then just a few useful links and useful places to go for a few little bits and bats. So the first thing I like to start off with is the actual roles within information security. Cybersecurity and information security are different things, no matter what other companies and people say online. They are different. And IT support is a tiny part of that as well. So I did a rant, for those of you who have me on LinkedIn, recently I started something called Tantrum Tuesday. And the first one was that IT support companies who say they do cybersecurity by selling a firewall and an antivirus are basically lying out their ass. There's far more to it than that, but then there's far more to information security than there is cybersecurity. So records management is part of information security and cybersecurity, maybe a little bit of IT support, but not much. So the difference is cybersecurity obviously focuses more on the digital element. It does go out slightly. But information security is more all-encompassing, and it goes into more about people. It goes into the buildings. I mean, look at the 27001 standards. So for instance, information security can also go into, if Royal Mail had, when they have a van they park up, we post in the back. It's the policies and procedures around how that's secured and how that, when that's left, that could fall under information security. But that sure as hell is not cyber security, and it's definitely not IT support. But they are all different things. As I was putting this together, I saw a lot of big companies who were saying cybersecurity is also called information security. And it really pissed me off because they're different things. And this is part of the problem with the whole industry. So cybersecurity it's not just about hackers, and they don't all wear hoodies. I mean, as good as Scott looks here, they don't all look as fetching in a hoodie and half a mask as Scott does. A lot of the things out there now, it's people trying to break in for cybersecurity things. It's more around state. You've got state-based actors. You've got professional organisations. You can go online onto the dark web now and quite easily go back. Find hackers for hire. Ransomware. Ransomware that you can send out yourself. It's very, very easy to actually do now. It's to try and break into a company and get the hold of the malicious software. It's very easy to do now. I won't do a demonstration because I'll get in a lot of trouble, but it's not very hard to do. So I'm just going to read off this one because, if I'm honest, I could not be asked learning off by heart. So the NCSA website states that cybersecurity is how individuals and organizations reduce the risk of a cyber attack. Cybersecurity's core function is to protect the devices we all use and the services we access both online and at work from theft or damage. That's not quite right for me. Digital Guardian, which is another company, they said it, in my opinion, slightly better. And it's more about the bodies of technologies, processes and practices designed to protect networks, devices and programs. from data attacks, damage, or unauthorized access. Still slightly out for me, because there should also be mistakes written on the air, accidents as well, because there is times when, so it sounds, I'm sure quite a lot of people who are here have done it where they've meant to BCC a load of people in and CC'd them in. Not a massive snafu and cock up, but it is one. It was, it was, and that can be classed as falling under cyber security as well. And obviously it falls under a load of other things. But so that does need to be included in there as well. But it's closer to the NCSC ones, in my opinion, and simplifies it a bit more. And as I said, as I was going through this, there was too many that were saying cyber security is information security as well. If anyone tells you that, smack them. Scott told me to say that. So cybersecurity, it can be, there are a lot of different categories within it. I mean, cybersecurity is something that's new, that's come around, fairly recently with the modern age. It's nice and sexy and hip, but it can be broken down into things that have all been around a lot longer and people understand in more depth. So when someone says, oh, I do cyber, what part? It's ridiculous. Do they do fall under the network, application, infrastructure, cloud, data, mobile, endpoint, incident response, disaster recovery, business continuity? Where do they sit? All these are slightly different, all interlocking, but pretty much every single one of these as well falls under, can fall under technology and electronics and cyber, which is where, again, cyber security is slightly limited, and information security falls a little bit better because it includes slightly more people and processes for businesses. So that's where, like your records management, that can fall into more into information security and things as well, because there's a lot more done there around the security of the data and information and the records, and it's not just how, if they're held electronically, it falls into HR, accounts departments, are they printing stuff off and things as well. That can fall into those categories there.
It's to say that some cybersecurity professionals tend to specialize in some of these. So, for example, you might get someone that specializes in mobile and endpoint security, but knows little bits about infrastructure or application security.
Yes, certainly. So, as I was about to say, these aren't put in any order, but you will get people who do certain parts. So, part of my role at YorCyberSec is if a company comes to me and says, we are doing an application security project, I will go out and I will find specialists within application security, because that can go down to things, the actual application itself, and then that, is it a web-based application, is it a mobile application, is it an iOS, is it an Android, what language is it written in, what's the functionality within it, can you do downloads, uploads, is there authentication, does it interact with APIs, does it interact with a database, how is it pulling its queries, so, and that's just within application security. Infrastructure and network can be even worse, and cloud's just someone else's computer, isn't it, if we're honest, someone else's server, but there is a lot more security around it. So part of the problem with the industry with cybersecurity, and in my opinion, is there's too many assholes who aren't actually finding what's right for the end user and customers. So if you go to a vendor, a testing company, and you say to them, right, we want to do a web application test, they say, yes, we can do that. But there's no guarantee at that point you're actually going to get a web app specialist. I've worked for vendors where they said, yeah, we'll put them on it because they're doing, they know ish, and then we'll get the specialist to review the report. Well, that doesn't necessarily give proper value for money and potentially a full in-depth test. There could be a lot that was missed by the rookie that would have been picked up by the specialist. So this is where, because it's a new industry, there's lots of people that don't necessarily know what's going on and what's what different phrases are. I mean, there's enough shortenings and different terms and phrases for everything as there is anyway. So it's quite easy for a salesperson to confuse and bamboozle people, especially when, as I said, most IT teams, most risk teams, most security teams within organizations are stretched as it is anyway. They don't have time to go do different training programs and different lessons, and do the market research. So it's very hard. So actually ensuring you get the right service and the right value for money can be very, very hard within this. But so that's where finding the specialists becomes very, very important. Like you said, Scott, you do get people who specialize in each of these, and some of these fit more into solutions than they do people and services. So your endpoint security, that's where you're looking at your endpoint protection, your EDR, your MDR, managed services, your SOC and things as well. But application security, there's a few things, but for me, application security, infrastructure, and network can all be, and incident response and disaster recovery can all be driven more by people and processes than getting the right people, the right companies, and the right consultants in as well. At the same time, I mean, the one that's overlooked out of all of them more than anything for me is incident response, disaster recovery, and business continuity. I don't know why I put that in brackets, because that's ridiculously important, especially with everything that's happened over the past 5-6 months. There's
one of the things about that I think of is that people forget that the difference between business continuity and disaster recovery. Like business continuity, keeping the business going through uncertain times. Disaster recovery, something has cocked up and it's a disaster, and you've got to come back from that. Disaster
recovery, essentially, for me, is in my head is shit's hit the fan. Something's gone horribly wrong, and you need to recover from it. That it could be a ransomware attack, it could be a DOS attack which has taken down a website, it could be that, but then there's overlaps to things. So it could be that a house down the road or an office down the road is having their building done or some of the pavement done and someone smashed through your fiber lines. That's a disaster, but then that falls also quite a lot into business continuity. I mean, business continuity is overlooked cyber sometimes, because as you put, a lot of people think disaster recovery and incident response fall, the same thing with BCP, but they're not. Business continuity, I mean, I've done projects with companies in the past where they've had to do it because often, they've been in big tall blocks in Canary Wharf, and offices above them are flooded. And, it's, well, what would happen to us if that happened to us? How do we keep business going in that instance? It could be that there's a global pandemic and no one's allowed to travel into the office. How do you keep business going? I mean, we thought toilet paper was scarce at the start of this. Laptops were ridiculous. I had quite a lot of people coming to me asking for laptops, which is something I don't necessarily like doing. But because no one could get hold of any, because everyone's like, oh, we need to start working from home. Right, okay, we need laptops everywhere. I was phoning up a few companies and speaking to some contacts, and I said, well, what are you doing about security? Like, the board's just told us to ignore it and just get people working. And there's lots of very, very basic things you can do, especially working from home. It's always fun doing it on networking events that I go on, where they say, what tips have you got? And I ask people to do a show of hands as to how many people have ever actually logged onto their home routers, changed the name, changed the wireless password, but then also changed the admin password onto their router as well. 3 things that can be done, 3 free things that can be done, but they all actually increase security quite a lot. So it's very few people have ever done it, but in the nicest way. Why would someone who makes candles, or a marketing company or an accounts firm, think of doing that? They rely on friends and family and their third-party IT support, who's told them that they're cyber specialists because they're lying out their arse with these things. If people are saying stuff, Scott, I'm gonna I can't see anything what anyone's saying if people are mentioning stuff, just as a heads up. My screen's gone into full presentation mode and I don't want to take it off and cock everything up.
I've got a couple of comments. So, for example, one of the comments earlier on is disaster recovery is a myth, or DR is a myth. You are a different company / person having experienced this. You can't recover to a different place. People think that they're returning to business as usual.
Yeah, very well put, in all fairness. There's not much you can really argue with that. It's the incident response, disaster recovery, and business continuity. They're all much of the same thing. It's all down to, if shit hits the fan, you know what the fuck you're going to do.
For those records managers that are on the line, that kind of thing should be also in place for not just network security and information security. You should be having a disaster recovery plan in place for physical records that could be damaged as well. There's a company called Harwell that does a lot of restoration work, but it ain't cheap.
Yeah, 100%. It's anything that's, you know, the people within records management and things. You guys are some of the most important ones within most organisations, because you actually know what data is what data is being held, what it's used for, where it is, and why it's important. So in theory, you should always be involved in all stages of this.
I don't suppose you'll marry me after that sentence, will you?
Pardon?
I don't suppose you'll marry me after that sentence.
I think my wife will have a problem with that. So, but yeah, it's overlooked, because I mean that's one of the most important things for anything around BCP, disaster recovery, instant response, or just data security, or you know, any of these things is, well, why the hell are you actually protecting it? What are you protecting as well? You know, what is it, a crown jewel? Is it, you know, just something that's there? And that's why actually having a proper records management system and things in place, and you know, actually knowing what you've got, why you've got it, where it's going, why you have to hold it, how long you have to hold it, how you have to hold it, is essential to most of these things as well. So
can you tweet it out then? We're the most important. You need to tweet it out that we're the most important people. I'm just like, yes.
It's one. If you don't know what day you've got and why you're holding it and all that type of jazz, then what are you supposed to do with anything anyway? It's, I mean, yeah, it's you definitely undervalued is actually knowing what data companies got. I mean, GDPR actually did a lot for that, because as much as a load of shit salesmen who were scaring people everywhere, and you know, the ICO like to scare everyone with it all, it did do some good, because it made companies actually think about data in a completely different way, which was fantastic. So yeah, can't remember what I was supposed to be talking about on this page at this point. I think I've covered it. I'm moving on. Right, so, why cybersecurity is not basic in its problems. So with so many different types of subcategories, how can it be? You know, trying to fit security in retrospectively, which is what a lot of places actually do. There's been a lot of projects where people have done, you know, full network refreshes, office moves, application stuff, and everything. And they said, right, and now let's look at security. It's like, well, you balls this up already. You know, if you're doing a lot of things from scratch, security by design is a massive thing as well. So trying to fit stuff in, you know, ad hoc just doesn't necessarily work. But that should be basic, but it's not with a lot of places. And there's so many variables, it'd be extremely hard to say any two companies are identical. A lot of companies, organizations, things share similarities and share some of the same issues, but it's very rare that any of them are actually identical, because everyone operates differently, people think differently, so it makes it very, very hard to say, that is exactly the same as that. So it's very hard to do that on a project basis. The human element is one of the largest contributors to data breaches and security issues. So finding ways of controlling the human element without reducing productivity can be hard, and also making it so people still want to work as well, which obviously falls into productivity. But I mean, if you're on your laptop saying, you know, you've been going solid writing policies and procedures for 2 hours, although I couldn't think of anything worse, but it's what Scott said he loves to do. He does on a weekend just for shits and gigs, he told me. You know, you may want to take a little break. You know, if you're Scott, you may want to go off and you know, watch a classic Star Trek episode. You know, you may want to do something. But if you're working for an organization, they've locked down your device entirely, so you can't do anything. You know, you can't even go check BBC News. You know, you can't go do anything. You're demotivated to work as well, or you'll get up and you'll go off and you know, you might check your phone for a bit longer than you usually would. You may go make 2 cups of tea, Yorkshire tea, obviously. You know, you'll find easier distractions, in my opinion. So it's kind of it's a very hard thing to cover. Most costs within cybersecurity don't offer ROI, and don't seem important until stuff's gone wrong. So I often kind of explain cybersecurity, and doing cybersecurity is a lot like insurance. You don't necessarily always want value for money. I mean, I've never once said I got fantastic value for money on my car insurance this year. I claimed 6 times. It just doesn't happen, you know. It's not necessarily something to say, oh yeah, you know, we've gone and spent a load of money on this instant response, disaster recovery and SOC, and yeah, we've been attacked this amount of times and these many got through, so all these people helped us and our cyber insurance kicked in. We got great value for money. It's not necessarily the right way of looking at it. So ROI for cybersecurity can sometimes be very, very hard, in my opinion. So yeah, and then it's very easy to overcomplicate, and lots of salespeople who are shite and sell on lies and fears. One example, when I started YorCyberSec, I had someone phone me up. Obviously, I hadn't done any research, and was asking me about GDPR. Phoned me up and he says, "Oh, you know, I just wanted to let you know about GDPR. GDPR, do you know what it is?" I was like, "I've heard of it." And he started off by saying, "Oh, well, it's something where if you're not compliant, you're going to get fined 20 million euros." I was like, "All right, why is that?" He says, "Oh, it's the law, it's government standards, and they do audits and checks, and you know, if you're found to not be compliant, you'll get fined up to that, and it'll cripple you." And I corrected him with a lot of things and told him he was a liar, didn't know what he was talking about, and he just said sorry and hung up. But the problem is that he would just go on to the next one. And if it's someone who doesn't necessarily know, you know, anything around this, it's selling on fear. And people will always buy through fear, but it's wrong, because you don't necessarily buy what's right. You don't invest what's right as well. So, yeah.
Well, there's lots of parallels there with our sector, because we often have trouble justifying or evidencing or proving the return on investment point. And just the same with us. Again, when GDPR came along, there were lots of people that were offering information management services, GDPR services, blah, 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 that didn't have a clue and didn't know what they were doing as well. So there's lots of parallels there between the cybersecurity world and our world.
Yeah, well, they intersect quite a lot as well. You know, you can't do proper cybersecurity. You know, you can't understand cybersecurity for an organization necessarily if you don't actually know what you're supposed to be trying to protect, what you're supposed to be keeping secure. So if you don't know what data, again, it comes back to, you know, like it's back to data and things as well. If you don't know what data you're trying to protect and what you're actually trying to do, you can't do it properly anyway. So, I mean, I had one person who I ended up speaking to at a networking thing. I can't remember where it was, near me. And he says, "Oh, I sell GDPR consultancy." I was like, "All right, what took you into that?" He's like, "Oh, well," he said, "I was a salesman. I saw a gap in the market, so I read a book, and then I've been going around and helping people with their policies and procedures." Like, so no experience. He just basically read a book and a couple of articles on GDPR, and then has gone round dicking about doing GDPR for a load of local organizations and local businesses. And I was just like, again, that's kind of what's wrong with everything as a whole, is there's too many people who do this, and he's just gone in and sold them fear to people. And it's just wrong. Those companies won't have any good value for money out of that. But, you know, if they've decided not to do their own market research, but it could just be they haven't had the time, they haven't had the knowledge, and, you know, they've trusted that person. I mean, there's a big difference between someone who's trusted and someone who's trustworthy as well, which is a whole other kettle of fish. I'm doing another talk on that somewhere else, actually, about trusted and trustworthy. You know, you can have someone who's trusted, like my mother-in-law. She trusts the garage she takes her car to for servicing and MOT, but every single time she takes it there, every time it has to go back at least 2 more times within the next month because something else has gone wrong, something's gone wrong with it that they've touched or they've done. She's like, "Oh, well, I trust them." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're not actually trustworthy because they keep fucking everything up." So it's, you know, we need to sort it.
Lee, going back to something you said about records management, information security, I actually did a talk for, I believe, the Prof. Danny Dresner is in tonight as a guest. He is University of Manchester professor, and I did a guest talk for him on reducing the surface attack.
Yeah.
The attack surface, sorry, with records management. That's, if anyone wants to watch it, it's on my IRM Girl blog.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I know Scott. I've worked with Scott for a number of years, and it pains me to say this, but he's very good at what he does. And a lot of those things that he's done, and when I've worked with him, is he's been really good actually going into places, understanding what data there is, what data is they've got, why they've got it, where it's stored, why it's stored where it is. and minimizing that, kind of condensing it, or making that data work better for the organization. So there the ROI is, look, instead of storing and having it across all these different things, you can condense it and do it kind of you can condense it. You don't need to have all of this. You don't need to be moving one CRM platform to another CRM platform, having both, keeping both stored. I mean, it's ridiculous. But as you said, if you do proper records management, you can minimize your it's not necessarily the threat landscape, it's the targets where people will go for. So instead of having the whole company as a target, it's only this one little section of it. And then that's where other things within security come into it, like access controls and a load of other things as well. But no, you're dead right. If you do proper records management, you can massively reduce the threat to an organization as well. So why cybersecurity is simple and can be is, as we just said, once you know what you want to protect, it becomes easier. Never fucking easy. It should become easier to understand. So as you said, if you can do a project where you actually understand what it is you've got, where it is, and why you want to protect it, you understand a lot easier how you can actually protect that. A lot of cybersecurity is common sense, and a lot of that comes from human elements. If you've never heard of your great uncle from America who's just passed, but you got found via an air hunter website, and they want to leave you over $1 million in inheritance. They just need you to pay the fees in advance, and it comes from an @Gmail account. Use your common sense. It's not real. There's a lot of things within cybersecurity that are just common sense. Does key data need to be held on a flat network with any rules across the firewalls anywhere so people can access it anywhere? No. Is there any reason for a large organization, for a dev team, to have access to the accounts department? Well, probably not. Does anyone in sales need to have access to potentially IP and the code on some specialist programs, or proper research in the university? Probably not. It's use common sense as to what people's roles are, make them fit. So yeah, a lot of reducing of the risk and mitigating risk can be done internally at low cost. Again, access controls, putting in 2FA, it's free for most cases, or MFA, whatever the hell you want to call it. It's free. Password managers and things, they may cost a little bit of money, but I've no issue using password managers. I tell a lot of places to use it because it means you can implement a proper password policy, which is potentially, implementing and giving out password policies potentially free. You say, right, this is it. You can use the password manager. We'll give you access to one, and then people have to have the passwords at a certain level. So, it's a lot more secure than them using their surname with the year at the end of it as well. The actual cyber community itself is actually great for sharing insights and tips. You see this on LinkedIn. There's enough groups and things out there. Like you've got the, they just changed the name, the CSEC, CII, you got CIS, CISP, not the accreditation, where if you sign up for that, people share tips and advice and stuff all the time, and people are asking questions. It's free to go onto, and it's full of very, very useful people who will happily help other organizations and other people as well. And for budgetary reasons and things, it can usually be tied to different compliance and regulatory frameworks, PCI, ISO, Cyber Essentials, NIST, GDPR, PECO, whatever it may be. You can tie a lot of these things together. If you're doing Cyber Essentials and you think down the line, you may want to look at ISO. Think forward, look ahead as well, see how you can do things moving forward. I mean, in the middle of those two, you've got something called 10 Steps for Cybersecurity, which is a fantastic little program which is run by the government, which is undervalued, in my opinion, and is a step up from Cyber Essentials. If you're in GDPR, again, tie it into ISO, tie it into NIST, look at all these different standards. There's no one standard that is better than others. I mean, ISO 27 is seen as pretty much the gold standard, but it's not the right fit for everyone. So it's finding the right fit for you and kind of working out as well, and tying everything in. What are the silver bullets? For me, as much as Scott looks beautiful there, artificial intelligence does not exist properly yet. So all these claims, we got all these big companies, I won't name any, like Darktrace, where they are claiming artificial intelligence and things everywhere. A lot of companies and stuff are doing it. It doesn't exist. It's a little bit of machine learning with a whole team of people behind doing research and updating the code and the lines all the time. It doesn't exist yet. There's some applications in very, very high tech where they're working on it. It's potentially close, but it's not fallen into your email filters yet. Let's be honest. It's not artificial intelligence. Throw in the latest technology at a problem, will solve it. Probably won't. One that made me laugh was when GDPR first came out. There was a firewall company that had this big branding and advertising push, which said, become GDPR compliant with our latest firewall. I mean, I don't know if anyone has ever become fully GDPR compliant by just installing a firewall. Again, can't see people's comments. Some people may be saying, yes, we did this. It's I probably wouldn't believe them if that was the case anyway. It's there's no one piece of tech which is going to save the day and save an organization by installing one thing saying, right, we're fully secure now. This is fantastic. So yeah, don't just throw tech at it. Actually look at the bigger thing. You know, use your knowledge around records management to actually understand what it is you've got. You know, why is it being done? Get involved in these projects early on, and you know, they'll save most organizations will save a hell of a lot of time and money. So a few of the little basic do's, because obviously it's all about basics. You know, use secure passwords or passphrases. So and I always try and keep them to at least 12 characters long. I mean, the ones I've got there is password for Amazon and, you know, password for Google. So that would be my Amazon password is antelope /. And then you could have, let's say you got Argos. You could have as my Argos password is antelope. It changes. It's kind of secure, you know, and it's going to be a lot harder to do. You can make it more difficult than that, but this was a very basic thing that I did for another talk, but it still fits. You know, my Google password is giraffe. It stays the same, so you know, no matter where you're moving, you can have my eBay password is elephant. As long as you keep a theme and you keep different, in theory you shouldn't forget it if you're not going to be using a password management tool. But for me, use a password management tool. There's nothing wrong with one, in my opinion. Use multi-factor and 2FA. As I said, most places this can be done free. You know, most organizations now are running Microsoft or they're running Google. They've got some fantastic authenticator apps and multi-factor apps. Use them. There's very few reasons I've come across where companies could say, oh well, we don't use it for this reason, that are actually valid. And there are some, but they're few and far between from the standpoint of, do you want to be more secure or not? You know, there was a recent story where the state-backed Iranian hacking group, I can't remember what they're called, they accidentally left one of their servers, which was a load of training videos, insecure and unprotected online, and it got found by, I think it was the CIA or the FBI, and they watched it through, and it showed how they worked through a load of compromised accounts where they had email addresses and passwords, and anytime they came across an account that also had multi-factor associated to it, they just went straight on to the next one. A lot of cybersecurity is just about making yourself harder to get into than your neighbor or someone else. I mean, you see all sorts of claims everywhere that everyone's being attacked 5,000 times a day. It's like, it's horseshit. There's little bots pinging off. It's not an attack, but they're looking for these little holes and all these things, but it's just making yourself harder than your neighbor, essentially. Having in place a working vulnerability and patch management program, you know, keeping up to date with your patches is essential now. I mean, a lot of the breaches that are coming around are from old machines, legacy machines. I mean, WannaCry came in because the NHS is criminally underfunded, and with that, you know, a lot of the IT and the infrastructure is as well. But at the same time, there's a lot of things they can't actually update. But if they had, you know, just standard patching on some of the main things that are internet and public facing, it would have been handled a hell of a lot better. So patch management is essential within security, and then train staff on basic information security. So using there's a lot of security training providers out there, and it's working out what's the right fit. I mean, I've put in, I think I've used 8 or 9 different suppliers, and I've looked at over 18 in the market, and they all have their uses. You need to consider certain things. So when you're going for security awareness training and you're looking at cybersecurity training for staff, you need to understand certain things like, are you just, is the company that you're working for, do they only speak English? Is English the primary language there? Are you multinational? Do you need multilingual? Do you have the capacity to actually run it yourself? Do you want someone else to run it as a managed service? Do you need certificates for, CPD, for continuous development programs? Do you need it for auditable reasons, within potentially things like PCI or ISO or the FCA regulations? Do you want phishing tied into it? Do you want vishing? Do you want smishing? There's a lot of variables within it. So again, it's not just as easy as going on Google and going security awareness training. Cool, I'm going to go with them, because that there comes down to the ones that pay the most to get the Google ads. And you speak to them, you're going to speak to their sales team, who will always tell you that they're the best. And that's where my idea for YorCyberSec came around, was security awareness training. One of the places I was at, someone phoned up and said, do you do this? I had to say yes, being a salesman, but in my head I was thinking, they do it better and they will be better for you. And it annoyed me that this was happening in the market a lot, so I gave it a stab. So yeah, any more questions that I need to worry about at this moment, Scott?
Just points for the most part, and Emily confirming that RM Dog is here.
Cool. So some of the don't get complacent or overconfident. It's, I hear this a lot when I speak to people. They say, "Oh, we don't need this," because there was one company that I spoke to where they said, "Oh, we can't be breached, and none of our customers can be breached because we deploy Mimecast with WatchGuard firewalls." I was like, "You can't be breached." She's like, "No, everyone's fully secure." And I was thinking, I really wish the Computer Misuse Act was not a thing, because I'll probably prove you wrong within the next 3 or 4 hours. Don't get overconfident. Things change, times change. Everyone who's had, Cisco and stuff, it's one of the market leaders. It's a fantastic product. They do some great stuff, but there's vulnerabilities coming out all the time on that. There's vulnerabilities coming out on VPNs which haven't been patched and aren't up to date. Don't get complacent and overconfident. You need to be looking at things continuously. And that's where it goes back into having a vulnerability management and patch management program in place. They do work, and they are undervalued as well. Don't trust everything you read or hear, except for when I'm talking. There's too many snake oil salespeople and stuff out there. And as the example I use there, become GDPR compliant with our firewall. It's BS. You need to understand what requirements are. If you don't have time to research, work with experts who can actually help. Again, organizations that I've gone into haven't bothered actually investing in people where they do records management and stuff, and actually, or even take the time to understand the data, how it's being held, why it's being held, and things. And it's cost them a lot of money and a lot of time in the long run. Whereas a lot of projects, if they're scoped properly at the beginning by an expert or someone with the knowledge, it doesn't have to be internal. So you can get an expert in, that it helps in the long run massively. And one from a security and testing point of view is, don't use the same people to supply and test your infrastructure and systems. So if you've got a third party who's doing all the managed services and does all your hosting, does all your building, everything like that, don't get them to test it, because all they're doing is marking their own homework. They're not going to come back and say, you know what, we've done a really shit job and you've wasted all your money with us. They're never going to do it. They're always going to say, yeah, you came up with a full clean bill of health, fantastic. So get a third party in, and then they'll actually be honest and you'll get proper feedback. And most of the time, these organizations, these third parties, are actually okay with doing this, and they're fine with the feedback. I mean, if any of them say no, you need to try and query, like, well, why won't you let us, when we're paying for all this and you're saying this is our stuff, why can't we actually test it? And if they're not going to let you do that, in my eyes, there's something wrong there. There's something not quite right, and you need to query that. And I've had it before where people said, "Oh, we're in a fully dedicated thing." They tested it and went, "You're in a completely, it's a fully shared environment. There's loads of other companies on there. We breached it, and we got into all these other ones." Caused a little bit of a hoo-ha and a ding-dong, like, but so be it. It was the right thing to do and bring it up. Some of the myths, I mean, I covered it earlier, IT support is not the same thing as information security. Tantrum Tuesday brought it up as well, the different things. So if you're speaking to an IT support team and say, yeah, we do cybersecurity, we do information security, you have to ask how. You know, it doesn't just come down to implementing firewalls, antivirus, a SOC, a SIEM, changing a password. You know, it comes down to things like, what's your policy on checking bank details for a new supplier? When you get a new invoice in from a new supplier, do you actually phone up and check? Does your IT support phone up and check those bank details for you? No. I was like, well, they don't do information security then. As they're saying, they are doing IT support for you. There's much more to it than that, and there's a lot of things that are you know, overshadowed and overstepped. That 4% or 20 million on the GDPR, you guys know that. I'm not going to teach you how to suck eggs. Because you've never knowingly been breached, you never will be or haven't already. You know, most breaches go undetected for over 90 days. It happens a lot. I mean, look at some of the bigger ones that you've had, like the Marriott, for example. When they did it, it wasn't necessarily them, it was a company they bought, but there was a lack of due diligence and things. But that other company, they'd been breached for donkeys and they didn't know. There was a company I did some work for 1 year, which was in the kind of high wealth management kind of sector. And there was the breach, I think it was about 3-4 years ago, about the Panama Papers, where it happened over there. A big company got breached. He said, oh, can you do an assessment on us? And went in, we had a look, and it turns out the person who ran all of their British Virgin Islands offices, which was their second largest outside of the UK, and he had disabled all of his firewalls, giving him full access to everything, and been downloading torrents. And 18 months earlier, someone had actually he downloaded a remote access Trojan, and someone had been harvesting data and keyloggers and passwords for over 18 months. And they had no idea whatsoever. And so that was actually quite an exciting and interesting one. But they had no idea, because the person who was harvesting it and taking all the data out was just quiet, just didn't go in for one big hit. They thought, well, I'm in here, I'm just going to sit here slowly just sniping away. I tell you what, writing down passwords is always bad. Write down your passwords. If that's what you want to use as a password management, fuck it, do it. No one's ever broken into someone's house and thought, right, I'm going to ignore the car keys, the iPad, the Xbox, the flat screens, the laptops, the purses. I'm looking for a book full of passwords. People don't do it. You can write them down, just don't have it in a big book that says, these are my passwords, and keep it next to your computer. You know, just be sensible about it. You can write in something and store it somewhere safe, but then you can write them down. There's nothing wrong with it. So do it if you really want. It's not the best method, but anyone who says that it's shockingly bad, you know, it depends on the circumstances. There's probably a few people that disagree with that, but again, a lot of this is opinion, and that's one of my opinions. Is write them down. Who cares? As long as you're being sensible with it, and don't make it obvious where it is, and actually store it securely, you're fine.
You don't put on a post-it note right by your PC screen.
No, I was going down to London one time, and I was sat next to someone on the train who was working, as they do, and he had a post-it note which had email address, username, password on it. And I went on, found out who it was, and I went and emailed his head of IT and security, and just said, oh, you may want to have a look at doing this, because there's someone who's working down here who's doing this. I didn't give the name, but I was just like, you want to have a look at this and actually let people with this, and, you know, have a look at password management tool. Let people use something. You know, you got KeyPass, you got LastPass, you got OnePass. You can actually use, you know, Google got its own, Microsoft has got its own. There's enough out there that are free or low cost and a fantastic investment. Just use them. Just as you said, Scott, don't just stick it down on a post-it note on your laptop. Unless what would be funny to do actually is do that, but put down a really malicious site and username and password, so when someone logged into it, it downloaded a crap and cocked everything up for them. That'd be funny actually, but that's there's a lot of work going into
it. On TV, there was passwords on a whiteboard, and the royal, was it Harry William? So there was royals in this business.
Oh yeah, there's something around that. Yeah, it happens quite a lot when you go everywhere. I mean, how many times have you been into an organization or anything where they've got, even in the reception or on a whiteboard, which is next to a window invisible from outside, wireless guest password or wireless network name is this, password is this, just stuck to the side of something. It's like, well, what's the point in having a cocking password if you're just going to go stick it up and make make it available to everyone? So they're obviously they're not resetting it and actually doing it securely. You know, it's not hard to do some of these things. You know, again, you just make it a process where even the end of every week you change it, or the end of every month, depending on how important that network is and how it's been segregated and everything's set up. But it actually happens quite often on TV. Because was it when lockdown first started and everyone was using Zoom, they did a cabinet meeting where the Zoom ID and password was fully visible as well. I think I remember seeing that on the TV somewhere.
There's also been one where someone Zoom bombed and displayed porn.
Yeah, that was in America.
It wasn't actually that graphic after all. I did go and see what it was about.
Yeah, research purposes purely, obviously. Yeah, it's yeah. Again, if you're going to make a big trial or something which is going to be publicly available, don't make your Zoom completely open. You mean you got Zooms, you got Teams, you got Google Meets, you got this program that we're on now, that camera, Livestorm. You know, there's lots of different things you can use where it's actually pretty easy to make stuff fairly secure. You know, you can make it so it's password protected. You can make it so everyone's on mute and it can't be taken off mute unless it's by the owner. There's lots of ways of doing it. It's just people don't do it, and it's that thing again. There, it's like you can't blame the judge in that instance for that one, because it's not his job. He will go in and use the tech that he's given in. He will hope that it's set up securely. Yes, he maybe could have asked, but you know, he's probably got bigger things on his mind. Maybe not now, but at the time he probably did.
Yeah, the only thing that he didn't, when he set up his meeting, the only thing he didn't do was stop other people from sharing their screen. So the people were able to share their screen of the porn happening. So yeah. Yeah.
But a lot of these things you can actually just do as a standard thing. You can go into the settings and click a button and put people can't do it. I mean, I'm on a couple of different programs and where it's exactly that. We use Zoom and I can't actually do anything. Everyone needs to be unmuted, or they need to, allow people to share the screen. You can't just do it as standard. So there are ways about it, but it may come as an update afterwards, in all fairness, because of that, because it was quite high profile, that. But yeah. So where to begin? You can have a good level of device protection knowledge. So, asset list, record management list, and have a decent antivirus and endpoint protection in there. Good email protection, mobile device management capabilities. Something that's overlooked as well is all these laptops and devices that have been sent out. What if someone loses one, or what if one gets nicked? Have they ever actually done a secure build assessment? So if one does get nicked, what can be done? Where can what can be done on it? And then from the same standpoint, is one does get nicked, do you have the capabilities to wipe that or remotely brick it? It's it's something which can usually be done within licensing agreements. Within G Suite do a version of it. Microsoft do something with Intune, which is very good now. There's loads of different products and things out there where you can do this. And for the remote workforce everywhere now, it's very, very important. Put in place working password policies. Don't just use standard admin passwords and everything everywhere. Pretty much goes without saying. Put in place a plan for the worst case scenario. Plan for the worst, hope for the best, and actually test it. How many? I do a few programs where we've gone and we've actually tested if someone goes wrong, people know what to do. And you don't let them know what the scenario is going to be until the day and until you're doing the exercise. It's very, very interesting doing that, actually. You kind of see who knows the role and who's been doing it and who just signs, yes, I've accepted this and I have read it. It is quite funny. Have standard policies in place for security checks, for new suppliers, starters, leavers, change of details. Make sure you're doing due diligence. One of the reasons AllowList and we set that up is because how many times do people actually do due diligence on organizations? There's the amount of times that this may annoy a few people, is my opinion. Say, oh, we've got ISO 27001. And you say, oh, well, prove it. Show me a UCAS certificate. Show me where your scope was. And people are like, and they can't actually do it. I got into a debate on LinkedIn with someone around this, and when I called him out and proved him wrong on a load of things, he deleted all his comments and then blocked me, which was really mature of him. But I was just stating facts that he had on his website, and he was claiming, there's lots of organizations that claim they have certificates that are actually owned by other people and suppliers that they use. We're 27001. And so, can you show us it? Oh, well, actually, it's not us. It's this company here, but we use them as a supplier, so it's fine. So it's not. So, actually learn to do checks and things as well. Put security training in place. I've already gone through that one. Patches and all that bollocks. I've done that. And ensure access controls are in place and regularly reviewed as well. So that goes with starters and leavers. If you've had people have a change of role, or if someone goes from marketing to accounts, or sales to technical, do they need the same rules and things that are in place that were there before, and do they need the same? Potentially not.
Well, that's something that came up in my last full-time job, was that they were epic at starters and leavers, but movers just fell way down the list. Like, people still had access from jobs they did 5 years ago. They've spent 20 years within the civil service,
yep.
And then still have access to something that they did 15 years ago. And you're just like, why?
Yeah, exactly. It's nail on the head that access controls are overlooked. And again, it's something that can be done for in-house, but sometimes it comes down to that same thing, that teams are, overworked and understaffed. They don't necessarily have time, but if there's a process in place, or, you've got something where people know what they're doing, where it's, on a Friday afternoon, they're going to process everyone who's going to be leaving or changing roles on the weekend. Bosh, it can go in and be done. It's just something that has to be done. It is overlooked, as you just said. It's like, why does this person need access to all of this? Well, they don't. Fucking get them off it then.
And this is where one of the people have put a point saying, trouble is people are lazy and they much prefer easier stuff. And if you know full well that if staff aren't doing access controls and whatever else, either from our point of view, so from an IG point of view, a records management point of view, or from a cybersecurity point of view, or vice versa, then they're not going to do the other. So if they're not doing it for a cybersecurity reason, they're not going to do it for an IG reason. Just as they're not doing it for an IG reason, they're not going to do it for cybersecurity reason either. So that's like another area where there's a natural alliance between the two of us as you want it, we want it. So why don't we work together to try and encourage the business to do it?
Yeah, exactly. The problem is a lot of organizations, what they end up doing is they do stuff for tick box. So it actually means fuck all to them. And it falls by the wayside. They'll start it for a few weeks, or, do it when the auditors and stuff come in. But there's definitely, in I said at the beginning, there's a lot of overlap between records management and governance and security as a whole. And you could work together a hell of a lot better. But sometimes it's just that little clash of heads. But it happens in everything, and but you're absolutely cock on, Scott. So yeah, a few useful links and resources. You obviously can't click any of them because they're on my presentation. But there's a few good little things there, which if anyone wants, I can send them out. That's not a problem. Thank you for listening, and Scott for inviting me. There you go.
Thank you, Lee. That was quite informative. Does anyone have any questions? I've got some that have cropped up, and some that people sent me beforehand. So if you've got any questions, write them in the chat box or the little questions functionality. Otherwise, I'll go through the ones I've got here. So the first one's kind of a bit of an obvious one. If there was one thing that we as a records manager could do to assist the world of cybersecurity, what would it be?
I don't know whether it's assisting, but it's as you said earlier, it's need to work together a bit better. You need to actually talk more. There's too many times when one of the first questions that I always ask when I go into companies and do projects, sometimes come in, we want to do this web application project, or this database project. I'm like, right, well, what data have you got? Why are you doing it? And that's where having the proper governance and management of everything would be so much fucking easier for everyone. It just speeds everything up. It saves a lot of time and it saves a lot of effort. So I mean, learn to speak techie, because people like technical people like it if you can throw in the occasional little techie word, but
I used to be the translator between IT and the general bods, is that I would translate what the IT people were saying. He says no.
Yeah, yeah, he's gone a long way around that, but essentially he's just said he's not going to do it. Yeah, but no, there's got to be more give and take on both sides, and it's sometimes you find that information governance people, in my experience, because you hold and you have a lot of the information and key information, is you end up asking, well, why do you need it? And it puts the back up again. So we say, look, well, it's just part of this whole project, this security project, we're looking to do this. You went, but why do you need it? And it's just like, because we do. So sometimes it's just down to communication. I mean, communication can save a lot of problems in life anywhere, can't it? Let's be honest. So,
I have a question.
Go
on. If some of our listeners in today wanted to kind of get into cybersecurity and transfer some of their skills, what would be your 5 top tips?
Learn random phrases that mean nothing in cybersecurity. No, there's a few good places and a few good little free courses and things that are out there. Open University actually have a very good one that's free, which is around cybersecurity and things. Link up with quite a few groups and people on LinkedIn. There's some fantastic people out there within cybersecurity and security in general. You've got the likes of Stu Hurst and Greg Van der Gast. There's a guy in America who owns a company called Wise, that Gabriel. He's called Gabriel or Gabriel. He's fantastic. There's lots of useful people on LinkedIn. Just listen to them. Cybersecurity is ridiculously sexy at the moment in terms of a kind of a thing. It's very popular everywhere. You're getting breaches left, right, and center, and it all relates to cyber. So it's not hard to come across it. It's just working out what's right and what's not. Because as I said, when I was doing this, I was looking for the definition of cybersecurity, and there was too many large companies, that were saying cybersecurity is often referred to as information security. So it's fucking not. Let's be, as I said earlier, they're completely different. The different things. Cybersecurity is part of information security. In the same way, for me, information governance fits nicely within information security, because if you don't know what information you've got, how the hell are you supposed to keep it secure? You can't do it. So, and they fit very nicely together and things as well. So there's some free courses you can look up, connect with some of the right people. There's some good books out there as well. Which again, if you went on and you added a few people, you can see what's some good books. Greg Van der Gast actually did a very good book. I think there's one called Cybersecurity for Dummies, which is pretty good as well. Scott gave up after the contents page. There's quite a few resources and things out there. There's some good programs and things. Is it BBC Bite Size? That's a thing, isn't it?
Are they for GCSE students?
Pardon? Is it not bite size? There's a BBC thing where they kind of condense things into stuff, and they did one on security, and it was actually it was really interesting and quite informative.
Okay.
And stuff as well. So yeah, it's cybersecurity as a whole. It's massive. So saying how do I get into cybersecurity? It's like why and what area. It's why are you looking to get into it, and what area do you want to get into, what interests you, why do you want to get into it?
I think that's the most important part, though, is that to say that is actually what is it you want to do within cybersecurity, to take what your interests are and hone in on them, rather than just going, I want to do cybersecurity because it sounds good.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Nail on the head there. It's why and what area, what interests you. So yeah.
There was also a question. So one of the questions came in around the links that you've got on your second to last slide, providing them. So if you've got no objection, what we'll do is upload a copy of the PDF of your slides to the London group.
Yeah, go for it.
So you can go straight to the links from there.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I've got quite a few more. They were from an older one, but there's still some relevant stuff like the antisocial engineer thing. That's a block list that they've put together, which they update pretty much daily with known bad web addresses and bad IPs. So, you know, if people are trying to connect to them, if you give that to your IT team, you say, look, can we just ensure this has been plugged in and updated? It will potentially block quite a few things, and it's completely free. The fish alert button from KnowBe4 is quite a useful thing because it gives you a way of actually highlighting if you've potentially, you know, there's been a phishing email or something coming in. You go, whoop, happy days. WP Scan, it's a free tool for WordPress sites by a guy called Ryan Dewhurst. He's like an award-winning guy for security who's absolutely fantastic. And you can have one WordPress site that you can scan for vulnerabilities free, or you can take a package thing where you can pay and you get a few more. But the way it's laid out is very simple, and there's like advice and remediation and all that type of jazz on it as well. Free. Us Northerners love free stuff. So, you know, it's I always try and find free crap. So, yeah.
Love free stuff.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone else? Thank you for those. While those questions come in, thank you for those people that took part in the polls, specifically the one around whether or not webinars, the recording of the webinars should be available to members only or the wider audience. That's something that this side is looking at the moment. So thank you for taking part for that. And I've seen that the two leading areas for topics for a future IRMS London event seem to be records management and risk as the top two. So when we're looking at content and speakers for our October meeting, we'll bear that in mind.
As someone wrote something about trying to get kids interested in security as well. Can't remember where it was.
Yeah, it's like the BBC Bite-Size stuff.
Yeah. So yeah. A good way of doing it I've got my 5-year-old interested in is coding. There's loads of free things and stuff out there for doing coding.
I really want to get the Harry Potter wand.
Pardon?
I really want to get the Harry Potter wand that you do the coding with.
Oh, where you can do it and it does all the different lights and everything around the house and whatnot. Yeah, this is one of my 5-year-olds. He's learned how to design his own games and mazes where enemies and stuff can chase him and all sorts, and it's great. I'll if anybody wants it, I can find the name of that program because again, it's free.
They used to do them because there used to be one local to me. There used to be one in Chelmsford, and they used to run it in the local library. I can't remember what they were called, what the name of them were, because I haven't met in a while, so I can't remember off the top of my head. But I know that a lot of them do them, the little clubs in the local libraries as well. So again, as us, as information and knowledge and records management people, getting involved in an event that's being run at your local library as well is also another good thing to do.
Yeah, Karen's cock on with a Raspberry Pi, fantastic things to do. You can just hook them up to your TV, and then you can just teach them coding and stuff on that as well. Kickstarter usually has some really interesting things on for coding and security and stuff as well. So yeah, have a look on there every now and then, because there's things where you can tie into your Raspberry Pi and you can code things to go around your house and do all sorts of stuff as well. So yeah, cool.
No other questions then. I'll say thank you, Lee. Greatly appreciated for giving up your evening. Quite informative. As I say to everyone, the copy of the recording will be on the YouTube channel in about 2 to 3 weeks' time, and the copy of the slides will be on the IRMS London area once Lee's PDF them and sent them over to me.
For me, if anyone does have any other questions or wants to discuss anything at any point, my email address and all the contact details are on the slides, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm usually procrastinating and not working very much by spending lots of time on there anyway. So I do that. It's I have a lovely northern voice, Linda. Thank you. So yeah, it's but yeah, if anyone wants to talk out, just give us a shout.
Thanks very much for coming to the IRMS London.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all, and hopefully see you at a future event when Emily's back in charge.
A goodbye from him and a goodbye from me, as they say.
See you later.
Toodaloo.
I don't know how to hang up on this thing. I'm assuming you